Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Otsego City Council meeting. Tonight is Monday, February 9th. Audra, can you have the record show that our assistant city attorneys present, our city planners present, our city engineers absent, all council members are present along with our city administrator. At this time, I'll ask you all to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first item of business this evening is the open forum. This is the portion of the meeting where you can come to the podium, state your name and address, and limit comments to 5 minutes or less. Would anyone like to speak at this time?
Gabe Davis. Last Friday, my niece, who's Black, she's a nurse. She was working, got off her shift at 6 o'clock, was driving home, saw a bunch of lights on cop cars, 3-4 cop cars. She pulled over, offered assistance. Turns out it was ICE. They stopped the car and picked people up. So she was pulled over to the side of the road, pulled out her camera, and she filmed it. After 2 minutes, she left. She didn't go more than a few blocks, and all of a sudden, a Bronco pulls out in front of her, slams on his brakes, stops her. Another ICE car stopped her from behind, came running up to her car, and we were yelling at her and telling her, roll down the windows, get out of the car, we're going to bust your windows. So they knew why she was there, why she had stopped. They ended up arresting her for obstruction and hauled her over to the Whipple building. Once she got to the Whipple building, they put her in a cell with 3 other women who were probably in their 40s. My niece is probably 26 at this point. The women calmed her down, and while this was happening, my niece happened to call her mother on her speakerphone. So her mother heard the whole thing go down. So anyways, they pulled her out of the cell, fingerprinted her, took her DNA, took her picture. Then they decided to read her rights and started asking her questions. Says, I want an attorney. Threw her back in the cell. They held her till midnight. Then they released her, and unlike a lot of people that have been released, and she's a U.S. citizen, they gave her phone back. She is terrified of going any place. Now, is any of that stuff going on around here? I've been hearing things about people being followed, protesters being followed, people who film the police in the course of duties being followed home. I've got other relatives who are school teachers. They got problems with ICE showing up at bus stops, following the parents home, following the kids home. Sounds like Gestapo days to me. Sorry, but that's what it is. Have you as the council heard anything from our constituents? I know I've door knocked 6,500 homes in the last election. We have a lot of people that do not speak English here. We've got a Hispanic population. We've got people from Africa, the Middle East. Have you guys heard anything from anybody about anything going on in Otsego?
We can, at the end of the meeting, we always go around and have the sheriff speak.
Nobody's contacted you, sent you an email saying this is going on, that's going on.
Council members?
No,
We have not been contacted.
Well, the Gestapo are here, so just to beware. We were very surprised, and her mother was very upset, as is she. Just doing what a nurse or a doctor would do coming upon us, seeing what they thought was an accident, and she gets hauled off to Whipple and inconvenienced for 6 to 8 hours,
Mr. Davis, was this in Otsego that this happened?
No, she was in Richfield.
Okay.
but she's got relatives that do live in Otsego.
Right.
So,
No, I just was confirming where it.
yeah, so and I've been told ice is everywhere. I know they've been in Elk River. I know they've been to St. Michael. Yesterday, they were in Howard Lake in big numbers. So the Gestapo's out there grabbing people. Basically, they're doing it on, you're not white enough. Well, come on, ICE, come into my house. I'm a white guy. I'm an immigrant, and I don't speak with an accent. Maybe that's my white privilege this time around. I don't know. But I keep expecting them. Yeah. So we'll see. Yeah, thanks.
Would anyone else like to comment?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, city staff, and the great residents of Otsego, it's always an honor to come by with a legislative preview. I am Senator Eric Lucero, and it continues to be my privilege to serve this community and the 8 communities that make up Senate District 30. So the legislative session begins a week from tomorrow, February 17th. And traditionally, we start earlier in January in the finance or the budget years. This is not a finance or budget year. This is a bonding year. And so we are starting really, really late. Well, as a consequence of that, we're only going to have approximately 6 weeks before the Easter recess. And that is important because all committee work. So all the bills have to make their way through the committee process traditionally by the Easter break. Then when we come back as a legislature, we have the remaining roughly 5 or 6 weeks then to finish up. It won't even be that long. It might even be 4 or 5 weeks to finish up any floor action on bills that made it through committee. So this being a bonding year, we haven't passed a bonding bill in several years. That should be the primary focus of the legislative session. There are a number of state-owned assets and infrastructure and or regional infrastructure and assets that I believe are prime candidates for a bonding bill. I know that we continue to have conversations. There are several in this community and or Wright County and beyond that I think are very important and serve a very valuable purpose to the residents of our community. So looking forward to those conversations. I'm not on the capital investment committee, but again, that should and hopefully will be one of the focus. Among the other things that we have seen some of the dynamics, the entire legislature is up. There are 134 in the Minnesota House. There's 67 in the Senate for a total of 201. The entire body is up. And then the 4 constitutional offices, which are the governor, attorney general, secretary of state, and state auditor, are also up. And one of our U.S. Senate seats is up. So there'll be 5 statewide elections in addition to the 201 legislative seats. So it's going to be, that's one of the dynamics. In addition, then we have a lame duck governor. And there's going to be there has been a lot of retirements, and it's just the dynamics are going to be something to watch, especially with obviously some of the heat and risen temperature on some of the topics that are presently dominating the headlines. Among those is obviously the fraud. When it comes to the fraud, that has been among the topics of conversation, and it's made a lot of Minnesotans very angry. So a couple years ago, the fraud conversations, I remember them starting with, well, the fraud is about a couple $100 million. Well, then the U.S. attorney, I think it was a year or so ago, he announced in a press conference that he expects the fraud to total north of $1 billion. Then I think it was about 6 months after that, roughly, he had another press conference where he said it potentially could be north of $9 billion. And then President Trump, approximately 3 weeks ago, he said it could amount to greater than $19 billion in fraud from those in Minnesota. Now, to put it in perspective, a couple of years ago, we had an $18 billion budget surplus. A surplus is the result of overtaxation from hardworking Minnesotans and from businesses. And that overtaxation, then instead of returning it, it was spent, and another $10 billion was raised in taxes. However, if you take that $18 billion budget surplus and you compare it to if that's accurate, more than $19 billion of fraud, that equates to the entire budget surplus would have been criminally stolen from by fraudsters and went out the door. That is what's made Minnesotans. It's among the top communications I'm receiving that there needs to be a crackdown to stop this, so that dollars can and should be going to the good people that serve. Other topics that I expect, we've seen some recent action of announcements by the governor in terms of the Second Amendment in and around the Capitol complex. So I think Second Amendment will be a topic of conversation. And then earlier this morning, I was down at the Minneapolis Federal Reserve for a housing discussion. Housing affordability continues to be a major issue. So if you recall, 2 years ago, I mentioned that the average age of first-time home buyers was 38 years old, up from the mid-20s about 20 years ago. That number is now 40 years old. And so the average age of a first-time home buyer is 40 years old. One of the things that makes me incredibly concerned as a policymaker is we've heard the phrase, the American dream. One of the facets of the American dream is to become a homeowner for generational wealth. I've been listening, being in the housing industry, I've been listening to podcasts on, different topics around the country. One of the things that really alarms me is there was a couple episodes where they were talking about young people and what is the definition of the American dream. And there's some anecdotal evidence now that the definition itself is changing, and that some young people, they see home ownership as so far out of reach that they're changing what their objective is, and they might be they're settling for being a perpetual renter. That's really alarming for myself as a policymaker. So I'm just throwing that out there. And that was part of the conversation we had down at the Fed. And there's all kinds of dynamics that play into, there's no single or even a handful of variables. There's many that go together, but it's a topic of conversation. And then lastly, the HOA bill, if you recall, I was the chief author of that, the Homeowners Association Reform Bill. And that did successfully make it through the Senate last year. I'm the chief author. It did pass the Senate. It's been sent over to the House. It didn't pass last year. Hopefully we can get some traction this year. It's a bipartisan bill, again, seeking to bring some necessary reforms to the abuses that are happening in homeowners associations. So with that, Madam Mayor and members of the council, if there's any questions, yes.
Mr. Lucero, you said it passed in the Senate, the HOA, but it didn't pass in the House.
In the House.
What was the reasons?
So my understanding is the committee, I think it's the House Commerce Committee, and I think that's Representative O'Driscoll, but I could be wrong. It's my understanding that the chair of that committee, he wanted to expand some of the area that needs to be reformed, and that is insurance. So we all know the cost of insurance is just dramatically rising. And there are some clear conflicts of interest, in addition to just standard single-family home owners and the cost of insurance. When it comes to homeowners associations, there are some very demonstrable conflicts of interest and other things, and abuse and fraud in the insurance space. And I think he wanted to expand the conversation in there, so he wanted to hold it up until this year to potentially, but that's my understanding.
So are they gathering more basically data points, people to come in and testify on that? I mean, because obviously you worked very closely with residents here in Otsego.
Yes. So I don't know so the chief authors in the House are Representative Meckland and Representative Bonner. They have been having active conversations with Representative O'Driscoll. And so I don't know the details there.
Okay.
But it's my opinion that is the insurance arena is very much needing to be addressed. But an already complicated bill with many moving parts, I think it's going to become more complicated to try to take another piece and tack it on. So it's my opinion, let's address that, but let's have two different reform bills. So I hope they don't get combined, because it's going to get very complex.
And something might get missed then.
Yeah, that it didn't get separated last year.
Yeah.
Is there any other comments or questions? Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. And I'll just put out there, I love hearing feedback from residents. The best way to contact me is by email, which is sen.eric.lucero@mnsenate.gov. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good
Representative
evening.
Walter Hudson, as I'm sure you guys are aware, good to be here again. I can't remember the last time I was here for a city council meeting, which is much to my shame, but I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight. In terms of looking ahead at what's going to happen in the legislative session this year, unfortunately, the dynamic is such that with this tie that we have in the House, where you absolutely must have bipartisan agreement in order for something to move forward, and given the fact that it's an election year, and given the fact that we don't have the same sort of budgetary pressure that we had last year, where you have to get certain things done by a certain date, otherwise the government shuts down, there's going to be a serious lack of incentive in order to actually get things done. And with the broader political climate right now, all the different things that are going on, I anticipate that there's going to be much theater that will detract from productive conversation. That said, there is still the possibility that necessary things that need to get done will get done. So tax conformity obviously is an issue with changes made by the federal government. I had a meeting this morning with the judicial branch regarding supplementary budget needs that they have for very reasonable asks regarding security and things of that nature, policy changes that will make things smoother and more efficient at their level, things that aren't going to make headlines, things that aren't going to be showy, but are definitely necessary in order to ensure that the efficiency of our state government remains on course. And then there's some other things I would like to work on. I have some thoughts regarding family law, which may be relevant to constituents in your city who are sharing custody of children. Sometimes you have people who abuse that situation, and there's certain proposals that I'm kicking around that could potentially ease those tensions. Another thing that I'm working on that I think you'll be particularly interested in as a municipality is I would like to propose a constitutional amendment that would prohibit the state from imposing unfunded mandates upon municipalities. And I welcome your feedback on that. I imagine most city council members and county commissioners and school board members would be enthusiastic about the idea of the state no longer telling them they have to do things without giving them money. Because as I'm sure you're aware, and of course I was on the city council in Albertville for quite a few years, when you have to raise property taxes, the people blame you. They don't blame us, even though we're the ones telling you that you got to do X, Y, and Z. And so I think that there's potential there, even under these circumstances, with it being a tied house, to get some bipartisan support, simply because this is an issue that really transcends partisanship. Everybody everywhere in the state has had to deal with increased property taxes. Everywhere, everyone in the state has had to deal with the burdens that have been placed upon them from St. Paul, regardless of their geography. So hopefully that's something we'll be able to move forward. Finally, I'd like to speak to the concerns raised by the gentleman to my right here. I wasn't going to disclose this publicly prior to doing it, but I was contacted by a Minnesota resident down in southern Minnesota. I won't specify exactly where for security reasons, but I've heard many stories and anecdotes in the same category as what you heard earlier today. And so I picked up a random phone call from a guy, and he told me a number of stories that people have been experiencing. And so tomorrow I'm going to be heading down there to survey the field and see what I can see and talk to as many folks as I can about what they're experiencing. And hopefully that will generate some sort of bipartisan conversation about what, if anything, can be done to kind of push a more measured response than some folks claim to have been seeing. I have no idea where that's going to end up, but that's my favorite thing to do, is to jump into things where I have no idea where it's going to end up. So we'll see, and I'm sure I'll let you know. Any questions?
Does anyone have anything? Right.
Representative Hudson, just had a quick question. I'd say it's more on, I guess, the fraud sort of stuff. Do you think there's any chance of recouping any of that? Have you heard any talk for the
Not
state?
really. It's difficult because when the U.S. attorney talks about a potential $9 billion having been lost to fraud over the course of the past 5 years, that's 5 years. So in that time, money passes through entities, it gets spent, it gets diverted. We've all heard the stories of suitcases full of cash heading overseas and what have you.
Yeah.
my guess, and it's total speculation, is that the vast majority of those funds are unrecoverable, just as a matter of logistics. Now, to the degree that they can recover stuff, I'm sure they will do everything they can at the federal level to do that. But really, the most pressing, in my opinion, the most pressing thing that can be done about the fraud situation that we find ourselves in is aggressively reforming the system. So, for instance, earlier this week, I met with a group of reputable housing providers, people whose the companies you would recognize their names, including the Association for Minnesota Counties, who talked about the fact that what they do in the housing space is distinct from these housing stabilization services that you've heard about, the program that was shut down because there was overwhelming evidence of fraud ongoing. And so their idea was very simple, and at first glance seems very logical, which is, let's take the money we were spending on this thing that doesn't work and spend it on the thing that we know does work, right? And so it's reforms like that, but it's going to require, obviously in these circumstances, bipartisan support, which, to my original point, is possible, but nobody should hold their breath given the current political circumstances and the fact that it's an election year.
Okay. Thank you.
So I have a couple of questions.
I'm sorry. No,
Um, So when it comes to the fraud, is the state protected at all? Do they have their own protections, their own insurance or something that protects the taxpayers' dollars that is supposed to fund certain programs, certain things that are going on? And is there going to be any kind of kickback or financial, leveling, if you will, of what was taken and what was stolen?
I wish I could answer yes to either of those questions. So in terms of protection, I don't think there's anything analogous to like an insurance or something where you can actually get indemnified for the losses that have been incurred, because those losses are a direct result of policy, right? And policy that was chosen to ship money out the door with minimal verification and oversight. And as I described earlier, it's difficult to claw those dollars back. On the other front of, I forget your second question. Can you restate it, please?
Oh, it was just in regards to insurance to try to get something, is the state insured or the
Yeah.
taxpayer dollars when they come up with these programs and they have these policies that set forth that they can get this money and they've gotten the money, then the money that we all put into that pot to do the good thing and help out these businesses, retracting that back. And you answered the
Yeah.
question, there's no insurance, there's not really
Yeah,
ways
the
to do that.
the mechanisms for doing it are criminal and civil in terms of pursuing bad actors and account seizures and things of that nature, which are very burdensome. The U.S. Attorney, I believe, stated in one or multiple of his press conferences that precisely that type of recovery is extremely difficult to do. It's the same reason why they're not bringing RICO cases, because RICO cases are difficult to piece together just based on structurally how they are the basis for them in U.S. code. He said that we're not going to be able to prosecute our way out of this problem. What you have happening, again, in my opinion, is a overwhelming of the system. So what we've seen in terms of the level of fraud across our programs in the state is so massive. You're talking about billions of dollars and hundreds of entities, thousands of entities, probably, that it overwhelms the capacity of prosecutors, law enforcement, lawyers of all types, the Attorney General's office, I mean, you name it, to be able to do it, because our society is supposed to be a high trust society, and we don't have the resources as institutions to address the scale of fraud that we've seen in recent years. And so that's why a fundamental redesign of how these programs work, in my opinion, is very necessary.
I agree. And then you made a comment in regards to lack of incentive to actually get things done. Is there a policy we can try try to get passed to change that to like requirements instead of the lack of incentive being a passive way to not get things done?
I love that question. So I have a couple of ideas. One is I think we should work towards getting rid of shutdown brinksmanship. So like in budget years where, you know, everybody always talks about there's going to be a shutdown, there's going to be a shutdown. That should be taken off the table. And I think one of the ways we could do that is potentially through a constitutional amendment that says, listen, if the legislature can't get their act together, we're just going to fund government at the same level that it was funded the prior biennium, minus some arbitrary number, 1%, 2%, whatever it is. And what that would do is it would ratchet up the pressure on the legislature to actually get the job done, because otherwise everybody's going to lose something, right? That's one idea. The second idea that I have is, and I talked about this at the I-94 chamber event in Albertville on Friday. Having been on the city council for a number of years myself, one of the things I miss is this thing called a comprehensive plan, right? Where we're looking at things 10, 20, 30 years down the road. And elections, yeah, they matter, but what you're looking for in city council members and mayors are people who recognize that they're a link in a chain and that there's a certain level of continuity. Yeah, you can respond to changes in circumstance, but there's a certain understood responsibility there that prior councils have set up a plan. They had a reason to do it. And unless we can articulate some new reason to deviate from that plan, we should probably go with the old plan, right? There's nothing analogous to that in state government, unfortunately. And I don't know how to formulate that, but I think that would go a long way towards solving, especially when it comes to things like we were talking about transportation, I-94. I surveyed the construction of the GAP project here between Albertville and Monticello and was talking to those guys. And the way their industry works is you've got guys who they basically, it's somewhat analogous to a military deployment where these guys mobilize and they go somewhere in the state and they work, 16 hours a day or whatever and sleep in a hotel and get up and do it again until the project is done. And well, if there's not enough work for them to continuously do that on a regular basis, then they're going to go to some other state where there is work, which disrupts the entire flow and the efficiency. And so it makes sense to me that we would do something analogous to what cities do, which is say, hey, as a state for the next 30 years, here's our priorities with transportation. So there's some amount of predictability and sustainability and efficiency. But that's the kind of idea that just makes too much sense for state. So
I like where your thoughts are going.
Yeah.
Thank you.
thank you very much.
All right,
Thank
thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Right, we will close the open forum and move on to item 2 to consider our agenda for approval. Does anyone have anything that they would like to add or delete at this time? Otherwise, a motion would be in order.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Ryan.
I move to approve the agenda as written.
Is there a
Second.
Right. Motion by Ryan, seconded by Michelle. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next item is our consent agenda. Motion would be in order.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Ryan.
I move to approve the consent agenda as written.
Second.
Motion by Ryan, seconded by Tina. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to item 4.1, public safety, our fire department staffing. And I will turn this over to Chief Scott.
You didn't have to move, David. Oh, okay, all right. Mayor, council, thanks for your time again tonight. This is gonna look somewhat familiar because we repeated some of the information that we were just at in January about our staffing plan, but added some information. So in January, we got permission to seek start advertising for the fire chief's position. I think as of this morning, we had about 7 candidates that applied, and I know another handful that I've talked to that are planning to apply this week. So I'm happy with the pool of candidates, given the market in the Twin Cities there's been a lot of Chiefs openings, so there's not a lot of candidates right now. That closes a week from tonight. And our goal is to have that person on board by April if everything goes right. Tonight's ask is to approve the job description and authorize recruitment for the full-time fire captain's position and the part-time firefighter's position. As you recall, the part-time firefighters, we're probably going to get two different groups of people, some that have experience and some that don't have experience. The ones that don't have experience, we have to provide all that training. So they'd have to start in June to get their 5 months of firefighter training done, and then about 2 months of first responder training. So that's why that's kind of urgent. We'll talk a little bit more about this, but the one change from last month that we moved forward to tonight is, instead of asking for all 3 of the captains to start in May, we're asking that 2 of them start in May and then 1 would start in late fall as was originally planned. And I'll get more details on that in a second. And then the 3rd captain, would start in this fall. Go to the next slide. So the reason that we're doing some of these changes is my goal is that we need to be fully operational as a team by January 2027. We don't need to just have bodies here. We need to be operational as a team by January. So that's the little dominoes that we talked about last month. We want to get the chief on first, so he or she is involved with the hiring of the captains. Once the captains are on board, the captains would help the chief with some of the things that are remaining, especially the training of the part-time firefighters. And then the full-time firefighters and the remaining captain can wait till later in the year. So what will the captains be doing? There's still a lot to do. In addition to building community, city council supports, city staff relationships, and continuing to build the relationships with our neighboring departments, there's a lot of stuff to procure. We've got equipment, uniforms, turnout gear, getting the station ready for response, radios, pagers, dispatch, apparatus delivery and training, standard operating procedures and guidelines. One really good example is fire key boxes. A lot of businesses are required to have fire keys where the fire department that's assigned to the area can go and unlock the box and get the master keys out. We've got 4 different key systems in our city right now, one for each of the cities that were assigned, Otsego, Albertville, and Rogers. And then the previous director started his own program for Otsego. So there's 4 different key programs right now. We got to eventually get down to 1. So that's, doesn't sound like a lot, but it's tracking down every one of those businesses, changing out the keys in them. Records management system, getting our fire department identification number, working with the state. Like right now in March, we're due to, not we, because we don't have our fire department identification number yet, but fire departments have till March to submit for their fire state aid from the previous year. So that's the cities that are providing contract services would do that this March, but there's a lot of things to do. In addition to attracting and engaging part-time firefighters, that's no easy task. Next slide. So I went back and looked at some history timeline because I was getting confused on some of the dates, and I think a lot of you know all these, but if we go to the next one, I did research through Laserfish, which is a wonderful thing. If you're geeky like me, but October of 2001, Elk River Fire Chief Bruce West attended a council meeting to talk about a possible fire station in Otsego. I did follow up with former Chief West, who's retired now, about that, and he and the current, at that time, city administrator from Elk River came in and presented to the council. Their plan was to build a fire station by the Round Barn area, which we ended up buying land eventually, and we still own the land. And then what Bruce said, Chief West, is about every 5 to 10 years, their proposal was to build another station. The second one was going to be at the City Hall campus site, and then the third one would be over on Highway 19. So eventually what their proposal 25 years ago was that we'd need 3 fire stations. Bruce said nothing really happened with that. It eventually resulted in the city doing a shared services study in 2016 with Albertville. And again, this is right from the minutes. Otsego City Council position is that each city builds and owns its own fire station. Each city is responsible for operating costs and capital costs of their own fire station. Later in 2016, and there was proposed You received proposals from ESCI and Fitch and Associates to do another study, fire station study, excuse me. And in June of 2017, the council decided not to do the study, but to meet with Elk River to discuss fire stations further. New fire chief comes into Elk River, 2017. John Cunningham, who's currently our Assistant Commissioner of Public Safety for the state, did a fire station study with 5 bugles and included Otsego because they were still responding here, of course. And at that time, Chief Cunningham came and proposed that Elk River should build a station that would be Otsego should build a station that would be managed by Elk River. And I should back up to Chief West. He made it perfectly clear that when they presented in 2001, they were presenting that Otsego needs to build a fire station, trucks, recruit volunteers, and that Elk River would manage it. So all those scenarios was we had to make the investment, but they would manage it, both in 2001 and 2017. October 2017, council approves a fire station study, which resulted in the Beacon GIS study. And then 2021, you hired Jerry Strike to do the capstone study. And there was 5 options presented. And again, going from council minutes, City Council agreed on option 5 appears to be the best option for Otsego. Create the City of Otsego Fire Department, build a fire station. Mr. Strike stated this option would allow the city to have full control. 2023, you hired your first director of emergency services. 2024, that director presented to you September 2024 his first plan for staffing, which included combination staffing of full-time and part-time folks. And then in April of last year, 2025, the director made a very detailed presentation about hiring 9 career staff and 20 part-time staff. We can go to the next slide. So that plan that was presented about a year ago is still the plan that is moving forward today, other than I'm proposing to move up the times again, because I think myself and others that are professionals in this field feel that we need more time to get that team ready to be able to respond in January. So the staffing amounts haven't changed, but we're moving up, suggesting to move up the time frames. So for example, 3 full-time captains in the previous plan a year ago, they were supposed to start in November. We're proposing 2 captains now starting in May and 1 in November still. 6 full-time firefighters was proposed to start in December. We're proposing to start them in November. Now, the reason for the full-time firefighters to start a little bit early is I've checked with departments that are hiring full-time staff. And when you hire full-time staff, you're hiring experienced people for the most part, although the market's getting a little thin right now. But for the most part, you're hiring people with experience, but they're coming from all different cities, all different avenues. Burnsville, Egan, Shakopee, all the cities I've talked to, St. Louis Park, they're still doing a 5 to 8 week academy. Even though they're walking in with experience, they're teaching them their city's ways. They're training as a team. They're doing a lot of on-the-job training. And then turnout gear, I mentioned that last time. Turnout gear takes 60 to 90 days. We can rent gear, but it shouldn't be a long-term solution. The 20 part-time firefighters were proposed to start in September. It just with even the company that's providing the training for us had expressed to the previous director that that's not enough time to get the training done. They wouldn't be trained by January 1st, and they're a critical part of our team. So that's why we're proposing moving them up. If we go to the next slide. There's a lot of different cities in Minnesota. The old saying is, if you visited one fire department in Minnesota, you've only visited one fire department. Everybody's a little bit different. But I wanted to look at some cities of similar population with similar staffing models and look at the square miles. I know it is a concern, which is legitimate, of only having 1 fire station, because even back in 2001, Chief West was proposing 3 fire stations for Otsego. But if you look at, for example, Austin, they got 29,000 people, 73 square miles. They're supposed to have 3 on shift. They go down to a minimum of 2 staffing. They got 1 station. They don't have a station for every 5 road miles. Faribault, 30,000 people, 120 square miles served, 3 on shift, 2 minimum, same as Austin, 1 station. Owatonna, another 30,000 people, 206 square miles, which is kind of crazy, but 2 minimum staff, one station. So again, those cities aren't putting a fire station every 5 road miles. It's impossible to do it for most cities. Monticello to our west, 19,000 people, 68 square miles that they cover with one station, no staff at their station. Farmington, exciting news for Farmington. They just started staffing. They have 2 on shift, first time ever. They're hoping to get up to 3 with another grant. So they're trying to get up to what we're proposing. 25,000 people, 80 square miles, 2 fire stations. They're not covering every 5 road miles. We can go to the next slide. So again, what our proposed staffing here is 3 career and try to augment and fill a 4th spot with a part-time person. Contracts for 2027, it's a really good question and something that you guys are going to have to decide sooner than later. I don't see a need for them. Citygate doesn't see a need for them. I don't know of another fire department that has their own fire department that has contracts to provide service for their city. Shared services discussion. Since I've been here in September, I've made it very clear that we want to talk about shared services, fire districts. We continue to have that open door policy. I continue to talk to 2 cities on a regular basis about potentially doing more with them. As soon as it gets beyond the chief's level, we will definitely get our subcommittee, which is the mayor and Councilmember Dunlap involved, but there are still 2 cities that we're actively talking to. You know, I wish we were part of that conversation with Albertville, but unfortunately, because of past history, I'll say, Albertville, St. Michael, and Hanover, as all of you know, have started to look at a shared services study. That train has left the station. Their RFP is done. They plan to do that. It makes sense for them to do that. They share a lot of things. I just was down at St. Michael today. They buy trucks that are identical to Albertville, school districts, water. They share a lot of things. So they're going to do a shared services study. And again, I think that's great that they're doing that. I hope more departments in Minnesota start doing shared services studies. I haven't talked to the Hanover chief, but both the Albertville and St. Michael chief know that we are definitely interested in any future opportunities to do stuff with them. But right now their RFP is literally going out the door. They're hoping to have that study done by the end of the year, which is going to be pretty aggressive to get it done, but I hope they do. And no matter what we did with shared services, when you look back at that study in 2001, the one in 2017, we needed to make an investment. So it wasn't Elk River going to come in and supply us with stuff. It was us needing to make an investment in our fire department. If you can go to the next slide. And again, I think sometimes when we talk about shared services versus contracts, the 2 might get confused. They're 2 very different things. So shared services and fire districts are partnerships, where contracts is we're paying a fee to have somebody provide a service to us. Shared services and fire districts aren't that. You know, the full-time staffing that we're proposed to have our station will help offset the distance to the west side of Otsego, but it's still a legitimate concern. Another option is to look at a temporary facility over in that west side, Albertville and St. Michael do their shared services study until they get done with that and decide what direction they're going. And we wouldn't have to buy anything else. We wouldn't have to add any additional staff. We could just simply put one of our trucks that we already have at a substation over in that west part of the community and have some of the part-time people report to that location. So it's something that we're exploring. It's not that we're not doing anything. I think it's a legitimate concern. The Monticello chief actually lives in our city, and I continue to talk to the Monticello chief, and I believe it's his assistant chief or deputy chief that live way over in the west part of the community. So they have a vested interest in us providing coverage over there. So we continue to talk about potential partnerships with Monticello on an auto aid program that they're willing to talk to us about. Next slide, please. So as we talk about part-time firefighters, that's going to be the hardest thing to recruit for. That's why we want to get that out and start advertising as soon as possible. I think there's a lot of excitement in the community. When you look at our neighboring departments that hire part-time firefighters, they usually do an open house at their station and really explain the time commitment, the initial time commitment and the ongoing time commitment. So that's something that we need to start planning on, and we need to start advertising that we're going to hire part-time firefighters and see what our interest level is. And again, the goal right now with our private company that would help provide training is to start in June. Full-time firefighters, this is a little repetitive, but it's every day it seems like there's another full-time firefighter position posted in the Twin Cities. Burnsville, who used to never hire anybody without experience because they're paramedics. They used to want you to be a firefighter and a medic. Now they're hiring just medics and training you for firefighting, and actually even talking about just hiring with no experience. But that's a tremendous amount of cost to the city and time to get everybody up to that paramedic level for them. The next few slides are just, well, I'm sorry. Well, that's yours, Adam. You get to take that one.
Thank you, Chief. Obviously, as Chief Scott mentioned, the timelines proposed in the staffing presentation made in each of the prior 2 years is different than what Chief Scott is proposing. And so there are impacts to the budget as part of that. So where are the wages coming from and which are included in your packet here? So the chief is a scored job description approved at the last meeting, scored at grade 16. For the next slide, which we'll get to, we're using midpoint of pay scale for that approved position. Same with captains. That is a pending job description, part of the ask and request included in the packet this evening. That's scored at a grade 9. So we are using midpoint of pay scale for that position. Firefighters, we have not had that job description fully drafted and scored to date. So we are relying on comparison city wage scales that we also used in terms of the captain and fire chief position to make sure that we were in the marketplace for what those positions are getting paid in other cities. So using the midpoint of that comparison data. And then part-time firefighters, pending job description included in the packet again tonight as an ask. This is not a scored position. It would fall on the city's part-time, seasonal, and temporary pay plan with a wage range of $16 to $25 per hour. Again, at the recommendation of Chief Scott after doing research amongst other pay scales for paid on call and part-time fire positions. So that's where the wage data is coming from for what's on this slide here. The 26 adopted budget totaling $382,000 with the hiring timeline that Chief Scott reviewed largely in Q4 of 2026. The amended hiring timeline that Chief Scott reviewed, we've got partial year on the fire chief position, captains as proposed, part-time fire and full-time firefighters. So using that midpoint data of both approved job descriptions and comparison data, what was presented tonight would be a cost of $575,000. So this is a significant variance, obviously, from where our budget largely driven again with the timing differences. So with that, I looked at a potential option for you, the council, to consider is looking at the Fire Reserve Fund. So this account has been accumulated over a decade or more, dating back to some of the previous studies and discussions about fire that previous councils have had in this community. So looking at the ending 2025 cash balance and interest allocations that are part of the audit process, subtracting out the capital improvement plan for the engine, the ladder, and small tools, and then also estimating interim fire chief salary billable hours from February through June that have not been paid out yet. There is $194,000 that would be remaining in that fund for potential consideration of use to offset that budget variance. So how that would work is, if this is something the council moves forward with, then you would at year end 2026 look at where budget and where actual came in, and you would transfer funds again with city council approval. Those are done by a resolution from that fire reserve fund into the general fund for that budget difference. And I think the rest of the slides are largely
Or just the timeline that we kind of spoke about at the last meeting and then highlighted again tonight. So with that, Mayor, Council, we're both open for questions.
Yeah, Mayor, Council, just as a reminder, in your packet, there are two RCAs, one RCA and a job description for the fire captain position and authorizing recruitment. There is a second RCA with 2 job descriptions related to the part-time. One is labeled as a cadet. Chief Scott could go into more detail, but largely this is kind of that transition period coming in with no experience going through the training process on fire and EMS, and then graduating to the second job description included in the packet as a part-time firefighter. Again, with the wage range, somebody with no experience going through training would be on the low end of that. Somebody that has been in the department and has all the certifications would be further along on that temporary scale.
All right, council questions, comments? Thank you for the presentation too.
Well, thank you. Madam Mayor,
Yes, Ryan.
just a couple of questions. So, you had mentioned that the staffing study that we've done before is pretty much still in play. You've kind of bumped up some of the timelines, moved some of the amounts around, but I'm still, that leaves me with some confusion because part of the issue is that we already have a staffing plan that was approved by a majority of the council, and I don't know how much of it to throw away. I don't know what's different. We told our neighbors they wouldn't get our first available truck when they call us for help. Is that still going to be our policy?
No, tonight we're just talking about staffing, the amount of staff. We're not talking about policies and procedures, but I think that's been my opinion since I came through, that's not the way it would work.
And at our meeting, fire advisory meeting, both you and I, Ryan, did talk with Chief Scott and so that we both didn't agree with that policy either. That we thought that
but it is the approved policy. So that's where I kind of want to, this is where we're moving at a pace that we haven't corrected some of these issues. They've maybe been corrected behind the scenes, but this is where I think the council needs to take some action.
Councilmember Dunlap, I'm sorry, but I'm not familiar with approved policies. Was there an approved policy? I'm not trying to, I'm just asking for clarification.
Yeah.
I know there was a plan. What was there an adoption of a policy? Because I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah. So the staffing plan was approved by the council.
Mayor, council, I'd have to go back and check minutes. I don't know. It was presented at a joint workshop of the Public Safety Commission and the City Council with public participation. I don't recall it, but I without going back to the minutes, I would want to verify that it was either adopted or not. But I think Chief Scott is referring to policies related to the fire department and how they would operate. And there's certainly been no specific policies or operating guidelines that have come in front of this council for official adoption. They were mentioned and included within a plan, but those type of policies under an operating department would mimic more formal policies that you see staff present to you for other things like investments or personnel policies. Those would be coming forth from the future chief as they approach operational status. So,
okay. So I tried to decipher it from this, but maybe you can help me. Our staffing model paid at rate for training. So whatever the rate was, that's what our firefighters would get for training while they were in training. Is that still something that we're going to do?
I'm not sure if I'm following you, council member. Are you saying that the hourly rate or while they're in training, while part-time firefighters are in training?
Yeah.
So the pay schedule that we're proposing tonight, everybody that walks through the door, we'd have to pay them hourly, no different than any city employee. The difference of the 16 to the 25, if we get a brand new citizen that has zero training for firefighting, we're anticipating starting them out at that $16 rate while they're in training in that cadet program, like a trainee, if you will. And once they've graduated and passed all their state certifications and are now a certified firefighter in the state of Minnesota, then they'd move up to a different hourly rate.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
I think so. Other cities pay a lower rate during training.
Correct.
So I'm trying to understand if we're going to follow that or if we have a separate pay rate.
And again, can I just clarify that?
Yeah.
Part-time firefighters, I mean, once you hire a full-time firefighter, you're not able to.
Right.
Okay.
So similar, I think we kind of touched on it a little bit, but maybe the terminology would be a cadet or someone who's non-certified. They're going to be paid at a lower rate, right? But other cities actually don't pay those. They have a $0 rate for cadets.
I'm not familiar with that. I don't know of any cities that do that. I don't know if you can do that.
Okay.
I think once you hire somebody, I think you have to pay them, but that's more of a legal question then. But I'm not familiar of any cities that don't pay an hourly rate once they're
Maybe Rick
hired
can
as.
answer that.
Okay.
You know, at the moment, I don't have an answer to that question. I mean, I would have to, it certainly does, obviously, bring someone on, whether, I would want to look into sort of what the rules and requirements would be in terms of training and what would be in that situation. But at the moment, I can't answer yes or no on that.
I guess my other question is on you kind of mentioned about bringing on the full-time firefighters, but only 2 of them early, and then the other one later in the year. But that sort of presents an interesting problem. What happens if we get 3 good candidates?
Your Councilmember Dunlap, you're right, and it's the full-time captains just sort of staying on the same.
Okay.
But I know what you mean. Yeah, no, I mean, I'd love to see all 3 of them start at the same time because it is a competitive market. And if you get 3 good candidates, there's a chance that that 3rd candidate isn't going to be available at the time you hire somebody later in the year. You might even have to repost. Definitely presents a challenge, but we're trying to be even though it's a cost increase, we're trying to be as conscientious to the budget increase as we can.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? Mike, I have one. So, and I had called Adam earlier today because I had a question about the cadet, the difference with that too. Is it likely that you get, so how many can be trained? Let's say 15 are cadets. Is that, how many can, I believe, Zippy,
Yeah, Scott Caribou.
Scott Caribou,
Yep,
there
yep,
you go.
Yep,
You guys all use this
he does like to be called Zippy. So
nickname for him. Yes.
So the gentleman that we're looking at for training can do up to 20 people at a time.
Okay.
Based on, contacts that I've received since I've been here, I'd say we're going to have quite a mix. We have people that are in the community that are excited to know more about what it takes to be a firefighter. They have interest. That doesn't mean that they necessarily will have interest after we do the complete, this is what it takes for training 2 nights a week. 2 nights a week is a lot in the summertime. And plus you're doing your regular job. And so there is some excitement in the community. It's definitely great if we can get some community residents that are interested in being part-time firefighters. But you're also going to get in the metro area, it's a growing segment of people that work multiple part-time jobs. So they might work part-time at Plymouth and part-time at Eden Prairie, and that's their full-time job, but working 2 part-time jobs. So those folks that come in with experience, all their state certifications and their first responder or EMT, obviously we don't need to start them in June. We don't need to incur any cost. We would give them conditional job offers and have them start later in the year with the full-time firefighters. But we don't know how many are going to be on either side of that, cadet versus part-time. But the cadet and again, all my experience with HR has been, if you're hiring somebody to go through training just from a liability standpoint of workman's comp and all that thing, you have to be paying them. But I'm not an HR expert. So that's where the cadet is different than the part-time firefighter. So once they go through all their stuff and they take their state certification exams, it's actually scheduled by Scott right now to be on Halloween of all days to take their state certification test at our fire station. And then they start their first responder training. Once they've passed all that training, then they no longer would be cadets and they'd be part-time firefighters. Does that make sense?
Yes. And my next question, and this is underneath the position description. It lists under for part-time firefighters that they have to live within an approved response time to the fire station. What is that usually?
So that might have been something that we didn't catch because that's the difference between a paid on call and part-time. So usually for part-time, you don't have a requirement to live with, especially with just one fire station in the community. It's really hard to say that you have to live within.
Okay.
my thought would be that it's a certain response time back to the fire station would typically be what we'd put in there. So we'll take a look at that. I didn't catch that.
I just, if there was no timeline, so I,
Yep, no,
know.
it's a lot of moving parts right now. So
Okay.
15 minutes, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
15 minutes.
but under
Which one?
Is that what it is? Open or Dunlap? Is that what?
on the draft,
Okay, I thought it was-
it's right here. It just says item 4, under minimum.
On this one, minimum qualifications must reside within 15 minutes of Otsego Fire Station.
That seems reasonable.
But on mine,
Which one are you on?
I'm on page,
This is the firefighter cadet.
and this is the part-time firefighter.
Okay, we probably didn't catch it on both of them. I apologize.
Sure,
for that.
it was on the one
Okay,
within 15 minutes, but this one didn't have it.
Yeah,
So
so that'd
that's
be
why
the
I wanted
language that we
clarification.
recommend.
Does everybody see that? Yep. Okay. This is under just the. Yeah. The cadet, it is the correct. Okay. Adam, this is a question for you regarding budgets.
Yes.
So fire reserve, I called you today because I wanted to make sure that this 194,000, we haven't earmarked it for something else.
Mayor, that is largely correct, right? With any decision, especially financial ones, there's opportunity costs, right? So, the fire reserve fund was created and funded accordingly to help start up a fire station and or fire department within the city of Otsego. So the funds remaining in that account are aligned with fire, right? They were put there for a reason by future councils. It is not currently earmarked for other reasons. We did reduce the available cash balance by things that are included in the capital improvement plan and budgeted for accordingly. Things that we know are in front of us here this evening in our interim chief Scott, making sure that we're paying for those budget items and things that we're already committed to get this project done. Now, all things being said, that 194,000 could have been used for potentially future capital equipment in the fire department. In this case, it is being recommended for consideration of use of staffing instead of capital. So it is available at your discretion. So short answer, it is not.
Thank you.
Adam, kind of on a follow-up on that, I wonder, so that will most likely deplete the fire reserve. We still plan on replenishing that, right?
Mayor, council, there is already a newly established fire capital revolving fund that is being funded at a very minimal level, given the assets that are within the department currently. But as time goes on, there will be capital improvement plan items and funding that needs to accommodate that. We'll cross that path when the fire station project is complete and the department is operational, what to do with any remaining funds. They would be transferred at the council's discretion.
So
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
to follow up on that one, we're not currently allocating, or are we currently allocating money towards an emergency fund right now? Or did we do away with that because now we have this plan for a fire station and budget and capital planning and all that stuff?
Right, you're developing the new revolving capital replacement fund as infrastructure and assets come on board with the department. So you're not funding things that aren't in service yet. You're not funding building repairs that haven't needed to be done yet. Those things are all part of future budgeting cycles to make sure that both the apparatus, the department equipment and tools, and the station facility is maintained properly and that you're funding accordingly.
Mayor, Chief, thanks for the presentation. I just had a question on the part-time and cadet firefighters. With having a number like 20, do you think it's pretty reasonable? Do you feel like there's been a lot of excitement that you've seen where you kind of get that number, or would it take a little bit?
Councilmember Tanner, I think we will have enough excitement. with the combination of residents that want to be firefighters. And then I've been contacted by a number of neighboring departments that have paid on call firefighters that could still sign up and work part-time shifts. And most cities would allow you to do that. As a matter of fact, most cities encourage it because it's additional training, hands-on equipment. So I've had a number of chiefs reach out to me and give me names of firefighters that wanted to come and learn more about what we're proposing. So there seems to be a lot of interest in the area,
Yeah.
which I'm excited about. I mean, I'd rather see it in the immediate area than further out.
Just because you're the expert, I'm not, but are firefighter or fire stations departments, are they always looking for more firefighters? Because, you know, like I drive by Dayton Fire Department on the way to work a lot, and I see they're always looking.
It's the reason that a lot of departments are starting to go to career staff. It's an ongoing struggle, especially as the closer you get to the metro because of the call volume. I was just talking to the St. Michael chief today, and you know, what's the magic number that you can still do a paid on call department versus going to some type of part-time or full-time or duty crews, another term that's used a lot, where you take your paid on call firefighters and you allow them to sign up for shifts and they can hang out at the fire station. So you know that there's firefighters there. Rogers is doing that right now. But it's an ongoing battle, not just in Minnesota. I mean, that's why volunteerism is dying so quickly. It's getting to be too much of a time commitment with the training and the call volume to rely 100% on part-time or paid on call model alone.
How long is I guess, the career of a firefighter? I mean, does it span 20, 30 years typically? You know,
So it depends. I mean, if you talk about part-time firefighters, it used to be everybody tried to do 20 years because your relief pension, you were fully vested at 20 years. So just about everybody did their 20 years. And
sure.
Now, you know, it's not uncommon. I was just looking at Albertville's annual report, and you know, it's not uncommon to see firefighters leaving with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and they're not even vested yet in their retirement fund. Before, that was really a draw because you were partially vested at 5 years and then fully vested at 20 years. Typically, there's a couple different plans in the state, but that was the typical investment. So you'd see people for sure stay for 5 years, so they're partially vested in a retirement fund, and then try to stay till 20 years, so they'd get fully vested. And that doesn't seem to be the carrot anymore that keeps people. If you talk to the younger firefighters, most of them want to get paid hourly and they want to get paid now. The retirement isn't that big of a deal. Although I think I was like that when I was 20 as well. So it's like, what's the pension? So it's changed a lot. I mean, it used to be you'd get people to stay a long time. In Egan, we were seeing, to us, you to get a part-time firefighter's return of investment. So by the time you bought them turnout gear, all the training time and certifications, everything you put into them, we would want them to stay for at least 5 years. And a lot of times they're only staying for 3 years. So there's just that revolving door, but much different than what it is here. St. Michael, for example, they're doing really good. I mean, their firefighters are getting a little worried because of the increased call volume, but they're still getting community members where, you know, you go to Dayton and they're not. Rogers is struggling. So, I mean, as the call volume increases, you're going to see volunteerism start to die off.
Well, maybe like with that, you know, if we have our own fire station, we're there to help them too as well, right?
That would be the goal. And I think Councilmember Denloff, I don't know if I fully answered his question, but the one thing, there was a number of things that I was concerned about with the previous, I'll call it plan versus policy, but there was a number of things I was concerned about. Definitely one of them would be, if somebody calls us for help and we're available, we need to send who we have at the station to help and then backfill. I mean, that's just the way it's done. That's mutual aid. I don't think it's a policy, but it was probably something that was presented to the council. And again, policy means probably something different to me than it does to you, council member. But yeah, I mean, the beauty of having people at the station is to get that truck out the door as quickly as you can. Yeah, every plan has its flaws, right? And you know, paid on call, you don't know how many people are going to show up and how long it's going to take, especially weekdays or holiday weekends. So there's no perfect plan out there, but this is a really good foundation for the future.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, we're not, sorry, it's up here right now. We can let you talk to him after. there any other questions for staff?
Madam Mayor, I just got a couple comments, I guess.
Sure.
Talk about the budget first. I mean, there's a 50% variance in the budget. And that's quite a lot. And it means we're going to have to find perhaps 100 applicants in the next 3 months, which is only 79 working days. The new HR assistant that we haven't hired yet is certainly going to have their hands full. This is in service of an arbitrary timeline that we've already broken. So I don't see the need to spend this extra money to meet a date that no longer matters. This plan does highlight that we need administrative staff and a fire marshal, which is something that I pointed out when we first got the staffing study. But what that means is more costs are coming. This entire project has been a foot in the door, an escalation of commitment with a council that is willing to spend whatever it takes to get a fire department with a complete disregard over the safety of our citizens.
Mike, do you have any comments regarding comments from Councilmember Dunlap?
I don't believe so.
I also want to address some of the other statements that were made. If you wouldn't mind pulling up the comparison with other cities. This to me is something that really confuses me, because it seems like we're trying to figure out how many stations we need. And I really appreciate that you pointed out that it's a legitimate concern, especially on the west side.
Oh, geez.
It's slide 9.
Getting
Yeah,
That one, no.
number 9. Yep.
So if the question is, how many stations do we need? I don't think this is the right type of analysis. To be honest, we've already had that question answered. It was part of the fire study. It's 4. The fire study told us we need 4 stations to match the performance of our contract providers. So if I look at this list, with the exception of Monticello, all the other cities on that list have sort of a centralized population. We don't. So I think Monticello is arguably the most similar to us, except that their response time is worse than ours with the contracts that we have today. So Austin Fire Department, as an example, they have a staffing model that's similar to what we're looking at here tonight, what we're planning. Except that they have 460% the number of incidents that we do. So what works for them doesn't work for us. Plus, the city of Austin, 97% of their incidents occur within 5 road miles of their station. 96% of our incidents occur within 5 road miles of a contracted station today. When we cancel the contracts and move to a standalone station, that number drops to 82%. We are paying more and getting less. And the hidden cost here, I think it was hit on tonight, is the fact that we need a second station and possibly even a third. The only way for us to avoid spending that money right now is to join forces with our neighbors.
Comment, Mayor.
Yes.
Obviously, the numbers that Councilmember Dunlap threw out, I have no way to verify any of those. 82% of the calls not covered within 5 road miles of the station seems a little off, because we cover the majority of the area where our high call volume is. And I'm not going to go back and forth with them on it. The reason I use these examples is Councilmember Dunlap had brought up a concern about 3 firefighters being unsafe, not meeting NFPA. And this is a great example. Austin, the chief there, I know very well. 2 firefighters cover 95% of their calls. They don't need 4 firefighters. Even if you look at Albertville's annual report, only 4% of the calls were structure fires last year for Albertville. That's the type of calls where you need more than a handful of people on a truck. So it wasn't to show the stations. It was more to show the call or the staffing model. I can't tell you if 90 whatever percent of the calls are within 5 road miles of Austin. I don't know that. Is he right that we need another station? Absolutely. I wouldn't say 4. Egan had 6 stations when we were paid on call model without staffing. We went down to 3 as soon as we went to staffed stations. So you have a city of 36 square miles, 80,000 people with 3 stations. So for our city to need 4 would seem a little far-fetched to me in today's staffing model. But again, I'm not trying to argue with them. I do think that the west side of the community eventually is going to need a second station. Councilmember Tanner, I think you had a.
Yes,
Yeah,
Cory,
Madam
sorry.
I was gonna say I can appreciate the comments, but I think tonight we're here looking at the staffing plan, and before we can get to a second or third station, we have to take care of one and focus on what we're doing tonight.
Madam Mayor, can I just, I'm sorry, one other comment.
Yes.
Couldn't read my own note. Joining forces, 100% agree with Councilmember Dunlap. To join forces with another city, you need to have a willing partner. So far, we haven't had a willing partner. I mentioned earlier in my presentation that I continue to talk to 2 other cities. As soon as those move along far enough, we can't force somebody to be a partner with us. I think we know what that type of behavior, forcing somebody to try to do something, it isn't going to work. I mentioned Albertville, St. Michael. I'd love to see a Wright County Fire District. That's not going to happen right now. They're doing their own study, which again, I applaud them for doing that. I have no issues with them doing that. They're moving forward with their study. It'll be done by the end of the year. So I don't think you'll have an opportunity to do something with them until they get their study complete. And then maybe there's an opportunity. But there are other neighboring departments that continue to talk to us, and I'd love to join forces, but you need to have a willing partner or partners to do that. But it is the wave of the future, for sure.
Yeah, and I do think, with regards to our service partners, they do have their own cities that they have to attend to first, as we do now. So I'm not angry with them or anything for doing that, because they have to take care of their own city first. Much like was pointed out in the, I guess that second study, or in 2021, when it said, and we just saw this weekend at this League of Minnesota conference we were at. We do not have emergency operating plan right now for our city. So if a big catastrophe happened,
Like a flood.
yeah, the other cities would have to take care of their own cities first. And so, it's things like that we're in the position we are. So.
Any other comments? So this evening we are being the request right now in front of us is for job descriptions to be approved and authorized recruitment.
Mayor, I'll make the first motion here.
Okay.
Motion to approve the fire captain job description and to authorize recruitment.
Second.
Motion by Tina, seconded by Cory. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1. Next item.
Now, Mayor, I'll make another motion. Motion to approve the firefighter cadet and part-time firefighter job descriptions and to authorize recruitment and to amend the seasonal and temporary employees pay plan to include the respective position and wage scale.
I'll second.
Motion by Tina, seconded by Cory. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item 5, city council reports and updates. Does anyone have anything?
Madam Mayor?
Yes,
I
Cory.
was just gonna say, kind of touched on it, but I thought it was a really great conference we were at this past weekend, and a lot of good speakers.
It's always, again, thank you, Adam, for getting us all signed up that could attend the league conference. Some speakers I would say were better than others. So, but it's always a good networking time too, to meet other cities, see what issues they're dealing with. And sometimes we just know what's happening directed here or just right around our neighbors. So
Yeah, the
people
network,
from all over.
the networking part of it's really important too, so.
Does anyone else have any city council reports or updates? All right, moving on to staff reports and updates. Adam.
Mayor, Council, thank you. I want to echo what Senator Lucero and Representative Hudson mentioned earlier. The importance of the bonding bill is a real life example as to how that impacts Otsego. Is without bonding bills, the financing methods for some of our water and sewer projects can't happen. And so by the legislature approving bonding bills provides funding for those loan programs and provides low interest financing, which keeps costs for these infrastructure projects down to residents. One reminder for council, I sent out a survey for goal setting to initiate that process. If you have any questions, please let me know. And if you could complete that by Wednesday, that would be ideal. Ongoing recruitments, HR, fire, and utility positions are all currently posted with application deadlines with varying dates next week. So that's going well. This week, the city received notification that we were awarded the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting for the 2024 audited financial statements. So just wanted to share that.
Congratulations.
Congrats.
And then
Good job.
lastly, city offices will be closed on Monday of next week for President's Day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Audra.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just going to remind everybody that Thursday we have the advisory commission interviews starting at 5:30 here at the Gray Center.
Everybody should have gotten your packet.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Is that in
Making
the
sure.
fireside room or whatever? Is
Yes.
that what it's
Okay.
called these days?
Yes. What it's been called since it was.
I don't know. Maybe we got a sponsor,
No, he didn't.
planning company.
Atkinson Anderson.
Right.
Ron told me
Since he's
that.
not here, we'll tell him. All right. Thank you, Audra. All right, Richard.
Nothing for me.
Okay. Thank you for attending.
Thank you.
Dan.
Mayor, the planning commission will meet on Tuesday, February 17th. We have some zoning ordinance updates to review.
Okay. Can we make sure that we get information to Nick since that would be a regular park and rec night? So we will have 2 meetings.
Way to go, Dan.
It was the last, yeah.
Yeah.
So
So who gets the boot?
He does.
he did. Nick's like, this is no fair. All right. Sergeant Olmans.
Sorry, I started walking up before you called.
Nope, that's
That
okay.
was really rude of me.
It was,
That
nope,
took all of Dan's time, so.
nope.
Real quick update. So I had taken a few phone calls and a few questions, I guess. And some of the social media stuff picked it up over the weekend. Actually, it would have been today, I think, that it kind of got released, and then it happened last Thursday. There was a violent criminal that was needed to be apprehended by an agency out in Wisconsin. So the agency in Wisconsin requested our agency to locate this person. While we were kind of in the process of communicating back and forth between the agency and Wisconsin, we were told that it's a homicide suspect. They located the suspect in Monticello, tried to do a traffic stop. They fled into Otsego. They clearly had no idea where they were going. Were not familiar with the area and just started taking every possible turn and ended up leading them into random developments and dirt roads, etc. So I guess one of the questions I guess that I had is, on our policy on that. Certainly some decisions have to be made by not only the pursuing officers, but by the supervisors that are monitoring the pursuit. If a pursuit goes through a neighborhood, typically we just terminate the pursuit and we got to get that thing slowed down because we can't keep chasing somebody. In a case like this, it's a homicide suspect. You have to weigh those things, and so it's a difficult conversation, I guess, or a difficult decision to make. But in this case, we had to continue the pursuit, kind of based on the information that we had. So the pursuit was continued. Fortunately, every single squad car that we have carries spike strips. One of the deputies was able to get some good spike strips on the vehicle, disabled a couple of the tires, and those went flat, and the person lost control in a roundabout. Again, maybe a roundabout conversation. Hopefully, the roundabout, confused them, and the little car went just softly off in the ditch, and that was that. And the remainder of it went without incident.
He's
So
maybe not aware of roundabouts if it came from Wisconsin.
I was. I
Over
mean, you
there.
watch the video. It's very. I mean, it's pretty intense pursuit, but the ending is very anticlimactic. It's just all of a sudden, just very slowly, just kind of slides. Officer roundabout took care of it for us. So I'm sure more conversation and questions about that tomorrow. Public safety. We had an award ceremony for the deputies about 2 weeks ago. So that was good. 2 of the deputies that were involved in the water rescue that I keep bringing up. I keep trying to show the video at public safety.
Will we get to
We're gonna
watch it
try
finally?
again. They got a life-saving award for that, so it's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Good deal.
Congratulations to them.
I had
That's
a
all I have.
quick comment.
Yes.
It makes sense tonight, you telling that story, because I got a call Saturday asking for more roundabouts, and I'm like, who has ever asked for
Funny.
more roundabouts?
Maybe
I-
somebody that
I'm
saw that
telling-
pursuit.
Right.
Yeah, they're making their way through. So.
Okay, just out of curiosity, isn't there like a device that is an attachment that goes onto like the front of a squad car? I don't know if it's called the
called
grappler or
It's
something like
called
that.
the grappler.
The grappler, yeah.
There's only one agency in Minnesota that's currently using it right now, and they're kind of being the test dummy for it. I think the
Okay.
biggest piece is that initially it was developed for more like southern agencies, so like Arizona was kind of exclusively using it. They're not sure how all the snow and grime and everything getting into that thing
Will
is
affect
going
it.
to work, how it's going to affect it, and then you're adding that much more cost onto every single squad car, one squad car.
Right.
There's a lot of variables in place, and the one that we see, I think a lot of people saw the one that happened in Minnesota. I think it was Park,
I
maybe.
think it was St. Louis Park, yeah.
Um,
that's right.
But you know, you throwing a Tahoe against a F-350 and a trailer, you're having this weight discussion,
Yeah.
and it adds a whole
It-
variable to it.
May not be appropriate for all applications. What I was noticing when I was watching a bunch of videos using the grappler, I just thought it was fascinating.
There's been discussion, and we're kind of waiting for other agencies to see how that works, because it's, you know, if it's a tool that works, you just kind of keep adding to the tool belt, so to speak. That's why I'm carrying all this stuff on me. Days done, you get a range.
Pretty soon he'll have a grappler on himself. He'll just get out of the car and it'll grab you. Does anyone else have anything? Great, thank you, Sergeant.
Thank you, sir.
Jason. Okay, if no one else has anything, then a motion to adjourn would be in order. So moved.
Second.
Motion by Tina, seconded by Corey. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. The meeting is ended. Thank you all for attending.